Okay, should we get going then? So let's kick straight in. We don't have very much time, or at least the topic is so big. Let's kick straight in. I'll share my screen with you guys. In Keynote, starting right from the beginning, if I want to make a presentation, I can make a new presentation. And I have a theme chooser. There've been a whole bunch of new themes. If you haven't updated recently, there's a whole bunch of new themes over here, which are absolutely beautiful. One thing I just want to make a note of is that the slide that represents the front slide is often not particularly representative of the slides inside. And I'll open up one or two to show you. So these are all of the themes. You can have a look at your recents. There's some basic ones, and they've broken them down into a variety of different areas. Now, if you're not seeing the theme chooser displayed this way, then you haven't updated your app recently. And where I'm clicking over here is going to be in a different spot on your screen, but the functionality is still there. So when you make a new presentation, you have two choices. You can create your presentation in a 4:3 aspect ratio, which is typically the old TV style or your typical VGA projector that you might get in the ceiling of a boardroom somewhere or a classroom. But more and more people are making presentations that are either delivered on higher quality HDMI projectors or presenting to a large format TV screen. In which case, I'd urge you to choose the appropriate style, or rather the appropriate size. So if you have a look here, all of these themes come both in the standard aspect ratio and in the wide aspect ratio. And obviously this gives you more screen real estate to work with. Hopefully that won't mean more bullet points and more words. It'll be just more cinematic presentations. So to give you an example, if I have a look at, say, this leather book presentation, if I open it up, there's my first slide. And if I add additional slides, you'll see that the cover is very different from the rest of them. So if you want to be able to use the templates and the themes, I strongly urge you to open them up and find one that works for you. And then you can go in and customize it to your heart's content. I'm going to close that one up and just open up another one. Let's just take let's take a recent one. Let's take this one. Okay, so let's have a look at the interface. You have a sidebar which contains all of your slides, and this is customizable. So if I click on this view pop-up over here, this is how I change the various looks that I have in my presentation. So if I just wanted to view the slide only, there's the slide only. If I wanted to view the, let me open up a presentation that's actually got some content. Let us take, I'll take this one because this is one I'm going to give you an example of. So this is a presentation that I made. I train in karate, and we made a presentation that had all of the katas that we work on. So there are no bullet points, or there's very few bullet points, but if I view this, I can view it as the navigator down the side. I can view it slide only, and that gives me more screen real estate. I can view it as a light table, and here I can see every single slide on the presentation. And I can move them around just by adjusting the order, just by dragging and dropping. So the light table is a nice view, and while we're in light table view, we can adjust the size of the slides to make it easier to read, or smaller to make organization a little bit better. We can also view it as an outline, and here you get to see all of the slides, but with the text bullet points that have been typed into the individual slides. So it really depends on what you're working on and how you work in a presentation as to which view you might choose. Typically, I work in navigator view most of the time. Now, if we go to a light table over here, you'll see that there's actually 26 slides in the presentation. But if I go to the navigator, you can only see 6 slides. And the reason why you can see them this way is it's possible to nest slides into sections. So if you're dealing with a series of topics and you want, it makes no difference to the way it's presented when you deliver it, but if you want to organize it in such a way where this is, say, part 1 of my presentation, this is part 2 of my presentation, I can select the slides and I can move them in and out by going left and right. And I don't know if you can you see a little blue line just to the left of my, my slides? This gives you the indentation of those particular slides. So I'm just going to undo that. If I wanted them to go left, I'll just drag them to the left slightly, and now they're on the top level. Once again, and so if I wanted to minimize some of these, if everything's minimized, these guys aren't. So I'm going to undo them and put them into here. Now, what's nice about that is if I decide that actually I want this to come after here, I can click and drag that below, and all the slides that were part of it get moved with it together. So that's a really useful component of organizing your slides and making sure that the structure is the way you want it to be. And much the same way you use styles in a word processor to be able to make certain slides subsections of our presentation, makes it easier to move those sections around rather than having to drag individual slides around. So that's the structure of the left-hand side. We'll get back to more. There were more that you'll see below there, the master slides. I'll come back to them in a minute. You also have your toolbar, which has your frequently used tools. It comes predefined with a bunch of things selected, but you can customize this yourself. And frankly, you can do this with any Mac application. You can even do it with a Finder. I don't know whether many of you know this or not, but if I go to my view menu, you'll see that there's an option to customize the toolbar down here at the bottom. If I click Customize Toolbar, these are all the elements that I can drag into or out of the sidebar. The toolbar at the top. So you can see they're moving slightly, much like an iPad, to let me know that they're movable. So I can move that to there, move that to there. But if I decide that I wanted to have, for example, the arrangement tools front and center so that I can move stuff to the front or back, I can drag this up to the top here, forward, backward. And if I wanted to put a little space between the two and record, I could do that. Now, if I click done, those tools are always available. And if I select something, that's a master thing, so I can't do it. But here I can make that go backward, I can make it come forward, and so on. So I can customize the look and feel of my toolbar to have access to my most frequently used tools. If I make a mess up, I can always go back to Customize Toolbar, and I can drag the default style back to the top, and that'll just set it back to the original settings. We'll deal with these as we get further and further into the presentation. Now, one of the main things about the slides are all of the slides are based around master slides. So if I was to add a slide over here, you can see there are what 15 slides. And if I was to add a new slide, let's just take this one, titled with bullets, and I now add another slide, it's going to add another one of the same style. So there's slide 1, slide 2. I can duplicate that slide by going to edit and choosing duplicate selection. And now I've got a series of slides that I can type in. So let's just say this is slide 1, slide 1. I have a very bad stutter there. Slide 2, slide 3. The whole point about having these placeholders here is when I come to deliver my presentation, I click play, the slides, the text is always in exactly the same spot. I'm not putting manually slide placeholders onto the screen. And as I move from slide to slide, it moves slightly because I put it in manually. So working from masters is a very, very good idea. Now I can also customize these things. So let's say, for example, I want to make a presentation that's going to sit on a kiosk, and I don't want people to necessarily have to use a mouse to do it. I want it, maybe it's a touch screen, maybe it's an iPad. I can make buttons that appear on every single slide. And I always want them to be under the finger at exactly the same spot. So I can go in and edit my master slides. And I'm not going to actually edit this one. I'm going to duplicate this slide. And I'm going to work on the duplicate. So I'm just going to say title with bullets, and I'm going to call this navigation, nav. Okay, so I'm going to go to my shapes, and I'm going to take an arrow. I'm going to take this arrow, and I'm going to put it on the right-hand side of the screen. And let's just make it green so it's quite obvious where it is. And I'm going to copy and paste that slide and put it on the other side. And when it comes to arrangement, I want to flip this horizontally. So now I've got a left arrow and a right arrow. And I'm going to introduce another concept over here. I'm covering a lot quite quickly, so maybe you're going to have to refer to the video of this later. But I want to make this into something where somebody clicks with a mouse, or if they touch with their finger on an iPad, they'll go to the next slide. I can link these documents. I can make a link. And if I've forgotten where the link is, help is always my best friend. So if I want to say, if I type in link, it shows me exactly where my links are. Okay, add link to a slide. So I'm going to go to Format, Add Link, Slide. And I now get a pop-up that says, which slide do I want to go this to? Where do I want this to go when somebody clicks? So I can go next slide, previous slide, first slide, last slide, and so on. Because this is a master and I don't know where the person is going to be in the presentation, I typically want it to be the next slide. So I'm going to say, fine, I'll go to the next slide, go to that slide. And I'm going to go back to my master slides. And I'm going to, can you see now that I've got a little hyperlink icon next to it? And I'm going to go to this slide, and I'm going to go Format, Add Link, Slide. And I want this one to go to the previous slide. Yeah? And I've got a hyperlink over there as well. So let's go out of our master view, exit our master slides, and oh, look, they're not there. So what I'm going to do, these are based on the previous master. I'm going to select all three of these slides. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to change the master. And I'm going to change it to title, bullets, and nav. And now I've got these navigation bars over here. And if I go to play my presentation, if I click down here on the right-hand side, go to slide 2, slide 3, back to slide 2, slide 1. And the eagle eye amongst you would probably have noticed that it's not just a link to a particular slide, but we can also go to a website, and we can also go to an email address. So if you've got a kiosk and you want people to send you a mail, or you're sending out a slide and you want people to respond, a series of slides you want people to respond to you, you can insert an email address over there. Okay, so that's your masters, that's your navigation, that's applying masters and a couple of hyperlinks. If you're familiar with Pages, Keynote, and Pages and Numbers, you have all the same tools that you had in those applications. So if I wanted to add a table, I've got tables. If I wanted to add a chart, I've got charts. And if I tap Edit Chart Data, I can put my data in here. So all of the typical tools that I'm used to with the iWork suite are available for me to use. If you want to put some text in there that's not part of your slide, you can still insert a text box. This is some text. And for those of you who don't know this, because I don't think we've covered this here before, when you add a shape, let's take this circle, for example, and resize it, all of the objects that you get inside the shape palette are actually text boxes. So if I double click in that shape, I can start typing. And I'll just copy and paste because you didn't pay to see me type. And you'll see that the text starts to take the shape of the box. So a nice way of putting a sidebar with some text inside it, and you can animate this, do all sorts of stuff with this, all sorts of things that you want to do with it. So in a nutshell, that's your tool set. That's your navigation. I'm going to close this guy up, and I'm going to go back to the karate one that I did to show you how I built a completely interactive presentation that actually wasn't designed to play on as a presentation, but as a website. So you can see here, I've got table of contents, which is a hyperlink. Here's your contents, and each one of these is a link. So if I was to say, click on this one, this is going to go to slide 15. And if I go to slide 15, you'll see over there, this is a series called the 5 Pinans. And there we are, we're on the 5 Pinans. If I was to go, say, to the next slide, all of these have got forward and back. This takes you to a help page. This takes you back to the menu for this particular section. So all of the tools that we have here are built into the master page. And all I have to do is put my content in here. And this is a video that if I click play, the video starts to play. And so on. Now, I'm jumping about a bit, but there is method to my madness. When it comes to saving these presentations out, typically most people think of a presentation package as something that you make presentations for. But those of you who understand the word, or old enough to remember the word multimedia, Keynote is a very rich multimedia creation tool. And what's important about that is you need to be able to share your content. So if I go to my file menu and I choose export, these are the formats that we can export it as. So we can export as a PDF, we can export it out to PowerPoint. You may lose some of the quality of the animations and the transitions because the stuff that you've got in Keynote is absolutely cinematic by comparison. You can save it out as a movie, and I'll show you why you might want to do that. An animated GIF, you can save it as a series of images, but you can also save it as a website. Now, if I export this as HTML, this literally builds a website, and I won't waste your time exporting it. But this is the presentation I've just shown you, and this is the folder that it generates when you actually create this is the folder, the cutters. And you see how it says double click me to start and all the assets that are inside there. All I did was choose export. If I take this and I just open this up in Safari, I have the entire presentation generated as a website, and I can click through it and go to any of these presentations, any of these cutters. I can go to the next one, I can go to the previous one, I can go back to the menu. Stop that. I can go to help, which tells you where to go, and I've got a big button that takes me back to the last slide I was on. So click anywhere to return to the video will take me back to the last slide I was on. So very, very useful application in terms of creating a wide variety of content. Okay, how are we doing? Almost out of time. So the next thing a lot of people might want to do is the animation side of your presentation. So let's have a look at this one. Animations, is that the one I want? Yes. So there are 3 types of animations that one can typically do in a presentation. There are transitions, which is what happens when you go from slide A to slide B. There's builds that you can, which is what happens within a slide. So maybe the revealing of a bullet point, the revealing of an image, the revealing of a video. And there's also actions, which might be some sort of animated action over here. So if I wanted to have, let's say, a doorway effect between my intro slide and my first slide, I would select the slide I'm leaving from, click add an effect, and here let's take, I see doorway, there we go, doorway. And you can see how a doorway opens. So the animation that you have in terms of your transition effects going from one slide to the next one. And you can change the duration. You can change whether it does it when you click on it or a certain amount of seconds after the previous slide. What else can you do? You can also do builds. So if we're going to add an effect, I'm going to select these bullet points and you can see that we've got a wipe transition. So let's preview it and see what happens. And you can see that they're all building from the left, not one at a time. There's a 1 second gap between them, and they're building from the first to the last. So you can build that sort of look within your presentation. Typical, it's not unusual. But what we can do here is we can select the build order, and you can take each individual transition. So this is the word September there. This is 1304. Each one has a wipe, and it does it on click. So if I say, okay, well, I wanted that one to come up first, but I actually wanted this to come with this one, I'll say, don't do it on click. Do it, I could say after build one, but if I drag it up over here, it does the same thing. So you can see that these two are joined. So now if I preview this, it happens immediately, and now the others are being done as I click. So I have quite a lot of control over my individual animations and how my bullet points are revealed. The third effect that I mentioned was the actions. So if I was to select, let's say, for example, this folder, and I wanted it to go to this side, because this is about folder sharing, and I wanted to share this folder to that side and this folder to that side, you'll see I've got build in, which is just a transition when it builds in. So I might say, okay, I want you to just dissolve in. And if I preview it, you'll see it just dissolves, it dissolves in. But I don't want that to happen. I actually want to have something a little bit cleverer than that. I want this to go like that. Let's see, have I got this? Oh yeah. So let's have a look and preview. See this over here. You see how it moved from the side, one side to the other, but went from the bottom to the, went down the bottom. So I want a similar sort of thing from here, and I want for this to go over the top. So I'm going to take an action, I'm going to add an effect, and I'm going to choose move. And you see it moves a little bit. So now I'm going to take this, and I'm going to move it all the way to the end. So it's just sitting where this guy was. Let's preview that now. Okay, cool. It's going all the way across. I want it to go a little slower, maybe. Let's make it go, take 2 seconds. Let's preview that. Okay, that's a little slower. That's fine. But I actually want it to go over the cloud. So it's joined by this line. You can see this little circle over here. I can now drag this up here. If I preview this now, can you see how this works? Right? So this is why you might want to be able to edit a movie out and save this out as a movie clip, and then drop this into something like iMovie, for example, to maybe build chapter markers between different segments of a movie that you might be making. In addition, there are, let's have a quick look at my slides. So over here, those of you who've been watching our replays of the video will know that I've got a little bit of an intro where you see these words appear, and they appear with a trace outline. Now, iMovie doesn't have a trace outline built into it, but Keynote does. So if I look at the formatting for this particular text, you'll see I've got an action, which is trace. If I preview it, so look familiar for those of you who've watched our videos. So now I've got a really nice little title sequence, which reveals that at the time that I wanted it to, the bullet points appear one after the other. And I can now take that and I can export that as a movie file. And here it asks me, well, I only want slide 1. So I'm going to take slide 1 to slide 1. I want to take the whole animation, and I don't care what happens afterwards, but I want to make sure it's long enough so that I can trim it at the end. So I'm going to say make that 15 seconds and make that 1080p. I'll click next. It's going to ask me where I want to save it to, so we'll put it on the background, and I'll say, I'll just call this title, export. You'll see it'll create a movie. Done. So let's hide that, and you'll see now I have a movie file, which I can now insert into my movie as really nice titling. There's a lot more you can do with that. You're going to have to come back for more. I've covered animation, exporting hyperlinks, master slides, interface. That's my story. I'm going to end there. I saw that Carolyn had her hand up. Carolyn, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, please. I just have 2 quick questions.
Yeah.
The first one is that HTML that you exported and that
Yes.
you viewed in Safari,
Mm-hmm.
would that be the only file one can send to a client or someone so they can view your presentation in that format or not?
Yeah, absolutely. We put that on a memory stick and we sold it to the students so that they could study it at their own leisure. And because it's
Okay.
HTML, it's openable in any web browser.
Okay, just
Equally,
that one file.
well, it's a folder. It's not that one file. The one that said double
Oh,
click me there
that's my
was
question now.
referencing, no, it's referencing all the contents of that folder. If you've got a website, you can upload that folder to the website and give people a link that they can access from there.
Okay. And then
And the
secondly,
second question?
I have I'm used to in PowerPoint to click on one picture and then to resize the picture into a smaller format like an email or a web or something, not the original size. I don't know where to find that option in Keynote.
Let me share my screen again and see if I can, I'm pretty sure I remember where to do it. So if we go to Keynote Preferences, there is a setting that says optimize movies and images for iPhone or iPad or older devices. And if you save that out, that will reduce your file size and optimize them for different devices.
Okay, so you can't do it per item, like per picture also?
No.
Okay.
No, you can't.
That would go for the whole presentation? So you won't do it per picture?
Absolutely. Anyone else got any questions? I know this was a absolute ram raid through the application. Part of my intent was to show you what is available because, you know, a presentation package is a presentation package. And there are plenty of people who make very, very boring presentations. And, you know, this isn't necessarily a workshop on how to make good presentations. I'll come to you, Michael. You know, there used to be a time where people said, you know, never have more than 6 words, never have more than 6 bullet points per slide. Frankly, I think that 6 bullet points and 6 words per slide per bullet point too many. You know, the presentations are supposed to be there to reinforce your story, not tell the story for you. And Keynote makes it very, very easy to make beautiful presentations that reinforce your story rather than tell the story for you. Michael, you had a question.
Right, how's that?
There you go.
Thank you.
Much better.
Thank you very much for the great presentation, and thanks very much for sending me the link again. I don't use Keynote a lot, but when I do, I really enjoy it, and I have done a few presentations with it, but not enough to become really proficient. And 2 things that I find is that I get caught out when I use the program or when I use my little presentation on a Microsoft computer. It always seems to be a mission. So obviously what I do now is I convert it to a PowerPoint from a Keynote.
Well, you have to do that because there is no Keynote for Microsoft, for Windows.
Microsoft. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
so you have to export it, and then therein there are issues that you may have to deal with because you may not have the same typefaces. So, you know, make sure that you're using cross-platform typefaces so that your fonts just don't go all over the shop and your bullet points start to wrap onto separate lines. You know, the other way you could do it, Michael, is you can, if you had a good internet connection, because these are all iWork applications and they're all based around the cloud, you could log into what's the current Microsoft web browser, Edge, and go to icloud.apple.com and open your presentation inside the web browser and play it that way. And then you've got the full Keynote, or at least the web version of Keynote, much like you've got Google Slides. You can just present it directly from the web.
Yeah. Fine, fair enough. Thank you. And then one just quick question. I noticed often sometimes I create a block on the slide and I'm going to type some text with some text in it, and then I forget. And I move the block and I started something else. And then I suddenly find that block is sitting there all the time. Is there some way that before I close my finished presentation, I can find any blocks sitting on the screen that I haven't utilized?
No, there's not. There's not. But thank you for reminding me, because there was something that I actually had planned to show you, but I rushed past it. They've introduced a really nice tool over here. Let me go back to the presentation that had a number of objects on the screen, animations. Okay, so in our view menu on the left-hand side over here, you've got something that says show object list. Because one of the other challenges you may have is that you might have objects sitting on top of each other, and it's very difficult to select the object behind. So if you choose show object list, this will show you every single object on the slide. You can lock them, but you can also delete them. So you can lock them, you can move them, and because it highlights it, can you see the little highlight marks over there? If I hit delete there you go. I just made a bit of blue text to hide the background. I'll undo that. So I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, but that's a great way of seeing every single object that's on the slide.
It does. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Alan?
Yes?
Do you edit this presentation, this recording, do you edit it with iMovie, or how do you edit it?
I do. I use iMovie.
Okay.
Every time I think I've reached the limit of what iMovie can do for me, and I break out the very thick Final Cut Pro manual, Apple update the application and it gives me everything I need. And I'm still in iMovie for about 14 years now.
Sure, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that session, yes.
Great. In fact, what I'll probably do is I'll probably use the material that, because you guys are familiar with this, I'll take you through my process of editing these down and
that will be
how
super.
I get rid of my clicking sounds. Yeah.
Thank you. That will be very kind.
Great. Mr. Pugh, I see your hand there, but I haven't seen you for ages. How are you?
I'm well, Alan. Hi, good to see you. It's quite a surprise seeing you giving this presentation. My question is making narrated PowerPoints. As a university teacher, we are turning all our PowerPoints into narrated movies.
Yes.
If I were using Keynote, would it be easier to do that, or would I still be using QuickTime?
No, I absolutely would use Keynote. Let me go back to my screen. When you're in Keynote, you can see I have this record button, but that's because I've customized this over here. Under play, you've got record slideshow. Okay. And if you record the slideshow, it will just follow you along. You narrate it as you go along, and it records the entire slideshow plus your voiceover. I'm sure you're familiar with this sort of thing, because often, especially when you're starting off with this sort of thing, you make mistakes and you stop and you start again. Sure. I just record all the way through now, and when I've finished, I just go out and cut out the mistakes. Much quicker and much easier to do that.
And how do you do the cutting out?
In iMovie. In
iMovie. Okay.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. Because you can do a bit of that in QuickTime.
Yes, you can, but it's a very limited set. It's easy to trim the beginning and the end and to split it, but just iMovie is just so nice and so easy once you get the hang of it.
Cool. Thanks, Al.
Yeah. Pleasure.
Thanks. Yes, Alan. I think, dare I say it, I think I might be converted.
Well, me and Paul, we used to joke. We said, if you can't do it in iMovie, you can't do it. So if you can't do it in Keynote, it probably can't be done. And let me show you something, guys. I don't know where you had this time, but this is an animation that somebody has done in QuickTime, in Keynote. Let me just come back. Share my screen. If somebody showed me this without opening up the presentation in the first instance, I wouldn't have believed it. I'm just going to play this through. that was all done in Keynote. It seems hard to believe, but absolutely was done like that. I may not have shared the audio, so I don't know whether you heard the audio or not. But if you're a school and you're trying to do mock-ups of applications that you might want to have ideas for, you can literally build those, especially with the hyperlinks in it. The ability to save it out as a movie, and as David was saying, giving lectures and recording them and popping them out. And even doing that and exporting it as an HTML file so you can load it up to the web, which then removes the problem of needing to make sure that the people who are going to be viewing this have a copy of Keynote on the other side. You can literally save it out as a movie file, as a PDF, as an HTML folder, and so on. And as I said earlier, we used to burn these to the karate stuff to CD or DVD and make DVDs of them. And it was just so time consuming that putting it onto a memory stick in HTML format was an absolute no-brainer. And people could copy it across, put it onto the computer, take it away with them. It's a lovely, lovely tool. It gets better with every iteration. I mean, I literally have not begun to delve into what you can do with the transitions, the graphics tools that they've got, the ability to intersect objects, remove things, mask objects. I've got one slide presentation, I think I might have shown Keith, where somebody's got a thought bubble coming out of his head and there's some turtles just going through the thought bubble. A movie of them, it's just phenomenal.
If you allow me, sorry, Alan, I know you said the HTML, the whole folder should go across.
Yes.
But now you've mentioned you've put it on a CD or on a flash thing for that matter, still the whole folder?
Yep, it all needs to stay together.
But how will the person who uses it, how will they know which file to open?
So normally with a website, the initial file is called index.html, and I just renamed it double-click me to start. And that's it. And if they double-click it, because it's an HTML file, it'll open up in whatever web browser they have installed on their computer.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also do include a little PDF file on the side that says, look, you can run this off the flash drive or you can copy it over to your computer. It depends on your target audience as to how specific you need to be.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Carolyn. Okay, gents. Well, it's lovely to see you, gents and lady. Lovely to see you guys again on this chilly Cape Town morning. Hope to see you on Wednesday for our next session.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks,
Nice to see
have
you.
a lovely day.
Thanks, Carolyn.